Thank you so much for inviting all of us here for this wonderful panel discussion on EVs ecosystem and making it more consumer centric. So it's very inspiring that our country is taking the lead in this sector, and this is something very very crucial for the future of transportation. Electric vehicles are not something that we look in future now, but it's now. It has become truly something that the Indian economy looks to measure, to feel, and has become the heartbeat of the entire transport system today. And if we look at it, something that is at the core of this entire EV ecosystem is the batteries. Making the EV system more and more accessible, user friendly, is the key that we are all looking towards acceleration of this EV adoption. Now, well, there are a lot of pressing questions that we all have on EVs and the entire ecosystem, whether it comes to an urban setting or it comes to the rural landscape, or even looking at how do we uncover something which is very practical for the end users and consumers to understand how EVs are really usable, friendly, and very very economic as compared to their ICE counterparts, and what is and how and to use the EV to its best, to get its best performance and to get its best efficiency, durability, life that we all are looking at, and it does not end up into the junkyard or a scrapyard, is something that each individual consumer also looks forward to. So, with this, and today I'm extremely fortunate that I have these industry stalwarts with me here, panels of experts who are literally leading their space in the EV ecosystem, whether it's two wheelers or four wheelers. So, this will be an incredible opportunity for all of us to discuss and see how we can actually make this ecosystem really robust, as well as see what are the challenges and opportunities that all of us have in this new space of the EV ecosystem that we are all looking at. Okay, so do we begin? Okay. So do you want to have a round of an opening remarks quickly, each one of you? Like, I think we could start with that, maybe with you, sir, first.
Yeah, hi.
Just quick.
Yes,
Fantastic.
yes. So thanks for having me here. So it's, as you rightly said, I think these are really exciting times for EVs. We've been talking about EVs for the last few years. And initial few years, every year was said to be the year of the EV, but that year never came. But I think what we've seen in the last 2 years, and most certainly in certain segments, certain vehicle classes like two-wheelers and scooters, I think that we are at the inflection point and super exciting times to be a part of this business.
All right, thanks for having me today. What I would want to say is that all of us in the EV space are running a marathon, not a sprint. So we have to be all patient, continue to work hard, make our customers feel the ownership experience of the EV is fantastic, and the whole ecosystem to be developed over the coming years, so that this also becomes the main wave as we have for the ICE vehicles.
Hi, Samir Jindal here from JSW MG Motor. So this year, 2024 just went by, and we have seen a big surge in the EVs, and especially with our launch of Windsor. The last 3 months, we sold 70% of our 5 cars only in EVs. So out of those, 3 are the EVs actually. And so this is showing how market is opening up, how consumers are accepting it, and we need a big ecosystem, like Madam you said, right?
Fantastic. Okay. So I have a question for all of you. I mean, you can take it up. So EV ecosystem is something very new where we see from the, we are all transiting from, this is a transition from having the ICE vehicles to the EVs. Now, first it was said that EV is your second vehicle kind of a thing. But today, when we see it is more on the mainstream. So, how do you think a Make in India initiative is going to really leverage this EV ecosystem and make it in the forefront and not as a second option, which it was portrayed to be? So, from you, sir, first.
Okay, so well said. It has to be make in India, but there are challenges, as you all know. And major challenges is in localization of all the EV or battery, I would talk more, battery components like BMS, semiconductors, wiring harness and all. Even, I mean, the basic cells, we have to import from China anyway. And the other parts as well is very difficult to manufacture. And what are the major challenges is that when you approach to any supplier with your own designs, it does not comes out to be cheap and what we get directly from China. So how it can be done more is while like the companies like Tata, Mahindra, they are designing the cars in India. So they design the car around the components and the systems available, right? But not everybody can do it. So this is one of the major challenges. But as this EVs grow and as this ecosystem becomes bigger, the material becomes cheaper, and even the logistics cost is very important. All those things will bring out cost of economy in developing this.
So, from my point of view, let's say since I belong to the luxury space in the car industry, I think in general I believe in a concept of 3CI. The 3Cs are customers, cars, charging, and the I is incentive. So these are the four wheels of this electric vehicle that all need to churn together. We need to have customers who are ready to adopt new technologies. We need to have sufficient models available at different price points. We need to have the charging infrastructure available across the country. And of course, this cannot work if it is not incentivized in the beginning for the first 8-10 years or till the time we reach 30-40% of penetration in the EVs. So all of this machinery has to work together. Everybody has to contribute to make the dream of 30% by 2030 possible. So I think we are going through this time. And specific to your question, whether the EV could be the only car in the home, I think we are moving towards that side. In the first few years, this was a challenge, but with the mileage of the cars going up to 600 kilometers for one full charge, and what we are seeing, customers are over a period of time now very comfortable having just one car, which is an EV. But I think we are in the process of moving in that side. It has not yet happened completely. It's a work in progress, and like I said, we are running a marathon. We don't need to be impatient. We have to be patient and we have to work hard to make this dream possible for the country.
Right. So, so two parts to this. You mentioned about how does this not become a primary vehicle and not a second one. I think we are slightly more fortunate if in the segment that we come from in scooters. Scooters are largely an urban commute. It's an intra-city commute, so you don't need huge batteries, highway charging, some of the barriers that perhaps the car manufacturers encounters. We don't have that challenge, right? So then it really becomes a question of what are the triggers and barriers for adoption. And I'll come to that. But the other point about Make in India, I think while Make in India is important, but if you see from the point of view of larger ecosystem, it is infinitely more critical to design in India for India. And this is not a philosophical construct I'm talking about. It is about designing for our road conditions, our climate conditions, our grid conditions. The power electronics that we have, can they take the surges that the Indian grid, which can be quite volatile? Importantly, the point that he raised is that you may design in absolute, but you also have to factor in the local supplier ecosystem. Like, is it geared to deliver what in absolute may be right? Or do you have to work around that? So unless you design for India, keeping all these things in mind, you may end up with a product which in theory might be right, but not right for the market. When I say market, I mean from a financial perspective and consumer adoption perspective. So designing is super critical, and if you design around India, then you will also make in India because you've already factored that into your thinking, right? So, and the point about adoption, I think there are two or three things which are critical. One is uh, distribution itself, right? The fact is, if there is not enough distribution, even if there is demand, how do consumers access that, right? And I think we are fortunate, at least in the two-wheeler world, where the legacy players like Bajaj, like a TVS, they've gone really aggressive in distribution. And what they do is they do a service to the entire industry because consumers now have access and options open. Second is about product choice, which again comes from multiple players, credible players coming in and having products with multiple propositions. And the last thing, which is very critical, is social proof. So the early waiver early adopters have come in sort of they're there. But when you're looking at getting into mass segments, people look for not everybody's a risk taker. And this is not just a financial risk, it's also a social risk. You don't want to be the guy who made a mistake by buying something wrong. So you want to make sure that there's enough EVs around you. Neighbor has that, uncle has that, wo chacha ke paas hai, mama ke paas hai. So once you see social proof, right, it just makes it easier for you to take the plunge, right? Fortunately, I think the stars are aligning, which is there is enough vehicles on the road to provide the social proof. Distribution is growing, credible players are in, they have good products, and which is why if you see the two-wheeler segment, and specifically the scooter segment, we're sitting at about 17-18% penetration, which is not trivial, right? So I think at least we have, in this part of the automobile business, I think stars are sort of very well aligned right now for a very, very rapid growth.
Since you've touched upon design in India and make in India, and there is something very crucial about Indian user mindset and behavior. We are not like the rest of the world, and what fits in India may not fit anywhere else in the world, not even in the developing or the third world countries for that matter. And with two-wheeler, it's more like if it's designed for two people, you will see four people sitting on that. So an EV then does not perform because it's designed for certain parameters, and there's a particular range tested, and all these technicalities work there. But how do you anticipate this kind of user behavior in India, and how do you deal with it? And this is for everyone. And how do you think these user behavior points could be educated to them for a better use of the product, making and understanding robustness and safety also, because safety is also becoming a prime concern in the EV domain as of today. Even though there's certain amount of adoption, but there's still a question in the mind all the time, will my EV also catch a fire? So, this is something very crucial. So when you talk of design, make in India, also I want you to talk about the user perspective, the user behavior, as well as how do we build in a lot of safety and educate the consumer on the safety parameters also. So three things together.
Okay, on the consumer side, you very rightly said India is very different. And whenever we launch a vehicle, we have to take care of that. So from the MG perspective, I would tell, the battery has an operating temperature, right? And Europe and America are cold countries, let's say, so they have a 35 max. But in India, we have to go to an operating temperature of 45, and max they can reach 55, where the battery starts degrading. So all these things we again have to get this software redesigned, even the dust and the water. So that is very important. Even the IP67, which is a waterproofing, we went ahead for IP69, which is a minor dust protection in future models. So all these things of safety is one of the prime thing in India. And thanks, we haven't had any incident till now on that side. And we are very cautious. First is the safety. Second is consumer preference. So we change the internet, how the connected cars connect to the customer. And then we also take care of EV infrastructure with e-hub, charging infrastructure all around the country, setting up chargers more than
1,000 public chargers, and also along with the cars and tying up with BPCL, HPCL to propagate it. So there are many things car companies are doing it. I'm not saying only MG, but a lot of car companies must be taking care of the customers.
Audi is a luxury brand, so I'm sure your challenges in terms of these three aspects would be little different from the other players in the same segment. So, what do you think is the focus in terms of safety, in terms of user behavior, and early adoptions?
So, like you said, we are a global luxury car brand. So, for us, what we, all these safety parameters are very well taken care of. Whatever we design globally, they undergo a thorough testing before they are coming onto the market. What we do is, since luxury car market in India is still very small, it's just over 50,000 cars, and which you have over 100 cars which are being sold. So what we do is we have a basket of cars that are available for us to launch in India from our global portfolio. We try to match some of those cars to be brought into India. So that is our selection process, where what we do is we try to match the customer requirements, customer psyche, to bring specific model SUVs, which could be body style, which could be, let's say in a particular model you have multiple types of battery, you try to bring the best possible for the country, the ground clearance, all those parameters are kept in mind when we bring in the cars for the country. And of course, when it comes to the ecosystem, uh, my understanding as of today is that in India there are, let's say, about 25,000 chargers in totality, but a large part of these chargers are slow AC chargers, maybe just about 20-25% DC chargers. What we need is high-speed DC chargers for the cars. That is something which is required. And just if you, let's say, compare, maybe we have about 80,000 fuel station and we have 25,000 charging stations. We need high speed charging station to that level if we need the penetration to go high, because for the cars also need to move from city A to city B. And this is where our experience with the customers has been that within the city there is absolutely no problem. In fact, our customers don't even charge their cars on a daily basis, once in a week, because within city commute is 50-60 kilometers a day, and the cars are fully chargeable up to 600 kilometers. So all those within the city, absolutely no problem. Across intercity, we have charging points, but again, if the charging point is not high speed, it takes more time. What we've been able to do is, for our customers, we've developed something called My Audi application. There is an app for our customer. Everybody has for this. So we have 1,000+ chargers on the app, which are high-speed chargers. You can actually design the route that you want to go from A to B. The route will be passing through multiple charging points. So all this payment facility in one single app, because you have multiple charging points, you need to download all the apps. So it is cumbersome. We are trying to, and this is now how we started. This is something which we developed over a period of time. So, constant engagement with our customers is the key. So, from first car that we've sold, we're constantly speaking to those customers, trying to find the problem statements and work like a startup to give the solutions. So that is how this is developing and evolving. And I think we need to continue on this path to be successful. I'm sure we'll be.
So yours is a different segment, okay? Yours is a two-wheeler segment, and two-wheelers see the most abuse in terms of the product when it comes to from the user's perspective. So how do you deal with all of that when it comes to customer education, and the user behavior? How would you see that? And then you could also quickly answer something on the charging as these business, and then I'll have a follow-up question on charging to all of you. Okay.
So when I spoke about designing in India, it's exactly that. It's when you design something, it's based on your understanding of consumer needs, which could be stated, could be unstated. It's your understanding of what a consumer might need. And just because the EV category is new, I think it will be naive and silly to believe that customers would change their behavior to adopt EV. It doesn't work like that. Right? So essentially, you have to work around the consumer. It does not take away from the importance of education, which is different from saying that this is my vehicle, you change your behavior basis what the vehicle is. It's not going to happen beyond a point, right? So we essentially are working around the consumer and designing for use and abuse. the point you were making a little while earlier about, while in theory the seat is meant for two, but there are more people. Now, we don't endorse that because it's not safe. But reality is that when we do our design, development, testing, validation entire cycle, we are looking at four people sitting and climbing incline with a cylinder in front of them, right? We test for that. Okay, we don't endorse that, but we test for that, right? So just to ensure that any corner cases also are sort of sorted, right? So, and when it comes to things like safety, what you just mentioned, see, safety is um, sometimes I wonder why we talk about safety in the manner we do in EV, because every vehicle should be safe. Like the fact that we're talking about it is something fundamentally wrong in the ecosystem, right? That's something that we're discussing as an active thing. But now that we are, safety is really is about ensuring that you're designing for safety. And then this entire cycle, I just repeat, design, testing, validation, at every stage, because you can mess up at any one point, and then and you come from battery world, you understand that just designing is not enough. So when we design for that, we sort of tend to over-engineer on the safety aspect of it. While we are committed to safety, it still is a new industry. So we don't know what we don't know. So we'd rather err on the side of multiple levels of failure, levels of redundancy, which adds cost, but is money well spent because you're not compromising on an area which is super critical, not for the brand, but for consumer, from a consumer safety perspective, right? So if you just sort of put everything together, is that if you understand who you're building for, and you understand the ecosystem in which you're building, is unlikely you build something which is not appropriate.
Get that. Okay, so now a quick question to all of you. Swap for you, Ravneet ji. Swap, fast charging or slow home charging? Choose one, quick. I'll put you on a spot.
I've answered this question. If I had 1 rupee for every time I've answered this, I'd buy all the cars that are here, guaranteed, right? So, so tell you, there is on a serious note, I think there is a case for swapping, there's a case for fast charging. We believe that from a consumer perspective, fixed battery and fast charging is the preferred solution. And not because there's some philosophical construct working here. The fact is that a scooter does about 28, 26, 30 kilometers a day. Any good scooter will give you about 100, 120, 130 real world range, not stated range, which is about 5 days of range. You need a regular 5 ampere plug to charge your vehicle, right? What's the need for swapping? Because swapping is not just, while it looks very convenient when you just see like a video on a reel, but the fact is it comes with multiple complications. It's costlier. Your batteries need to be architected differently. Your connectors have to be architected differently from a safety perspective. If you're swapping, you need more batteries than there are vehicles. Someone has to pay the cost. Clearly, the OEM is not going to pay that cost. The consumer is.
So ultimately, it is passed on to the consumer.
And very importantly, we are nowhere near steady state in battery technology, right? When there is advancement, as it happens every 2-3 years, how do you absorb the new technology, because you already have a base of old swappable batteries, right? So I think from a consumer use case perspective, fixed and fast charging.
So you are going with fixed and fast charging.
However, I just want to end there. I think there is a small use case for swapping for the gig economy, etc. Okay. We don't participate there. Okay. I think there may be use case there, but not for consumers.
Okay. How about you, sir? Both of you are from the four-wheeler segment. Now, quickly just tell me whether you would go for a home slow charging or a fast quick charging. Though you've touched upon that, but then you got to make a choice now here. This could also be from your insiders analytics that you get from your cars and from the behavior of the consumer as well. Choice is yours.
So if you ask me, from a technical side, my understanding is that most of the time the batteries should be charged on slow charging, on AC charging. So as far as the home charging is concerned, it has to be AC. Intercity, it has to be high-speed DC charging. So that's how it is.
So you balance the two. How about you?
Yeah, I think he's very right. The cell balancing happens at the slow charging. You know that. So at least once in a week, slow charging is necessary. And as we talk about kilometers, so car easily can go average 300, 250 to 300 kilometers. So you need 2 or 3 times charging in a week. That's all. So that 2 or 3 times you can do on the fast charging on the highway, going on a long distance trip. But once you are back on the home on the weekend, you should have a slow charging.
Also, for the consumers, there is some insight that there is this new website by the government which actually combines all the chargers, and you can go and register your own charger infrastructure there. And they just have to download then one app to get connected to all the charging stations around the nearby spaces that they have. This is a new initiative by the government now. It is still under process, and I think should be released maybe in next 2-3 months. So that would actually give a lot of push to the EV adoption. One last question is touching a bit upon the financing side. Now, this is something that is very, very crucial because there are existing models, financial models, funding models available for the ICE segment. However, the EV segment is still very new and it is developing. It's nascent, and so there are certain challenges or new innovations required in terms of financing of EVs. So, what are your thoughts on that? And I also would want you to touch upon the MG's BaaS battery as a service model, and how do you think that these financial models will help the consumers to really have a very thoughtful and an informed decision to buy EV as their primary car?
Okay, so I'll just talk on the BaaS, battery as a service, where you can separately buy the battery in the financial model and you reduce 3 to 4 lakhs on Windsor. So the price comes to 9.99 lakh instead of 14 lakhs. But I mean, this concept is not very innovative, but how we made it into a business model is the key thing, discussing with the financiers, the banks, and finally getting it, some of the financiers agree to finance it. And then, madam, as you know, the second life of the battery is one of the critical thing into this aspect, where we saw how much degradation happens after 7-8 years. And we gave the full life warranty for the battery in this model to the customer. Also on the technical side, the financiers, one concern was that if there is a defaulter and he is not giving per month basis, right? How we handle that? So I developed with the one company in Taricar the system for telematics plus the immobilizer together. So where you can control, or whoever the fleet owner or the battery financer can control each and every user and immobilize the car after one of the, I mean, they stop and they can.
When the EMIs are not
EMIs
paid,
are not
and
paid and all those things.
the
So,
loan is not paid, you could
yeah.
actually recover the vehicle
Yeah,
and
right, right.
do the needful then.
So you have seen the footfalls in our showrooms because of the BaaS model. People get attracted, come, and then suddenly our EV sales increased.
That's nice to hear. Yes, sir. You.
So the segment that we sell the cars in, I think this is not one of the major criterias for the buying for our customers. But of course, one of the, let's say, the apprehensions, apart from the mileage, one single charge mileage, is about the resale values. And the resale values
Critical.
of, there the battery plays a major role. And I think every country goes through that cycle that you have to run through first 5-6 years, where first the cars have to come back to the market in good numbers, and then you evaluate the resale values are good or bad. So I think it is still a time. We've just started to sell in about 3 years time. Only few cars have come back to the market for resale. But all these, whatever we are selling, they're all standard global products where the life of the batteries are tested for very long cycles, and we warrant the batteries for up to 8 years, lakhs of kilometers. So I think this is not a major topic that we see as a constraint for ourselves. I think it's more about the perception of charging, more about the anxiety which slowly is diluting, I think, from where it was 3 years back to where it is now. And last but not the least, I think going a little bit out of the context, like I was mentioning in the very first statement, we are running a marathon. So sometimes media, sometimes all of us become a little, jittery that, why the percentage has not increased to X, Y, Z in terms of penetration of EVs. So I think we are all evolving. We are working very hard to bring the products. The charging companies are working hard to bring the infrastructure. Government is providing the subsidies, and customers are willing to buy these cars. So the combination of this in next few years gives us the confidence that we as India will become, EV dominant country in a few years from now. It could be in 5 years, could be in 7 years, could be in 10 years. But I think the path is very clear. The direction is very, very clear. The speed could be high and slow in some years, but we are moving in the right direction.
Right. I think from a finance perspective, it's a solved problem. It used to be a problem. We started selling in 2018, and I remember that time used to be a challenge on getting financiers on board, even for basic financing. So there used to be auto financing within quotes, but they assumed no collateral. It was really a personal interest rate that they were sort of giving, right? I think those days are gone. If you look at the market, all the big banks are in the fray, all the NBFCs are in the fray. If anything now, the ecosystem has also matured for people to understand that this is actually a less risky proposition than ICE. Because most vehicles are connected, there's trackability. So there's theft detection, tow detection, geofencing, immobilization, a whole bunch of things. And if you look at interest rates that consumers get from banks, it's a combination of cost of capital, risk, and operational cost. Risk element here is lower because there's trackability. You can stop the vehicle if somebody defaults. So we really don't see a challenge in financing. I think there are interesting business models emerging, like the BaaS model. I think there are many other models that will come up in the next few years. Because fundamentally, the connectedness allows you to experiment with a whole bunch of things. Because the risk angle is fairly low. I also want to touch upon one point that Balbir made about resale. It is a critical factor in people's adoption, and I do agree with what he said is about, and the risk essentially people's minds come from their perception about battery. How long will it last? If I have to replace it, how much do I have to pay, etc., etc. Fortunately, the organic market maturity takes care of a lot of these questions. So the question that we used to get asked in Bangalore, 6 years back when we started selling, we don't get those questions at all. But I do know that tomorrow when I open a store in some town somewhere which I haven't been, I'll have the same questions. So it's a organic sort of a market maturity context, and but fundamentally the understanding that EVs are not a piece of plastic when you resell, which used to be the case, by the way, and I think there was some truth in that as well, given a certain crop of EVs there. That's no longer the case, right? So, most OEMs today offer 5-year or 8-year battery warranties. That gives a lot of confidence. If a typical replacement cycle is 4 years, 5 years, then you're within that warranty period of resale. So I think from a overall market perspective, these things eventually are getting sorted in consumers' mind, and I really don't believe it's a big problem.
Fantastic. So, as we close this discussion now, I'm really thankful to all of you here for giving us this fantastic insights on the battery ecosystem as well as the consumer behaviors, and how we've understood that local manufacturing is something that is going to be the core, to be a strategic, transformative move to actually bring in a lot of opportunities to the nation. This will also improve the critical charging infrastructure that is required for the consumers to be more committed to EVs. Then sustainability is also very important thread that is knitting the entire transport ecosystem, whether it is just in the consumer segment or even for the cargo segment for that matter, or the heavy vehicles or the heavy industry segment. Sustainability will be at the core, and EVs will drive that sustainable future. And how the next generation is so inclined towards EV and making their parents have an informed choice of that, let's buy an EV. So that is the major shift that we all are seeing in that. And as my panelists have also said, that financing is not a challenge anymore. So with this great news, I think that we can still see more EV adoptions, and we can also see that by 2030 we reach the targets of 30% EV adoption. And I think with this momentum that is going on through, with new technologies that are coming up, with the new battery technologies, powertrain technologies, even for that matter, EVs, I love that statement that EVs is just not plastics. So with all of that coming together, I think we can build a very robust ecosystem, which is made in India, not just for India, but even the world for that matter. So I'm very hopeful and positive that with this ecosystem in EVs, we will see more safety, robustness, and lot of adoption for a cleaner, greener future for not just us, but even the next generations to come. Thank you so much.